On a summer morning in 1942, a United States Navy airship came drifting in over California. It floated down a residential street, scraping rooftops, and came to rest against a house. Firemen and police ran to it, expecting to pull injured airmen out of the wreck. They wrenched the door open, and the cabin was empty. Both crewmen were gone. Their life jackets were still on board. The radio worked perfectly, and not one distress call had ever been made. Two men had vanished from a flying machine in the middle of the sky, and nobody has ever proven what happened to them. This is the story of the ghost blimp, and the answer, when we get to it, is quieter and far more human than the legend. To understand this, you have to understand the moment. It is 1942. America has been at war for 8 months, and everyone on the West Coast is terrified of one thing: Japanese submarines, hunting shipping just off the American shore. So the Navy put blimps in the air, slow, soft, unglamorous airships. A blimp is really just an enormous bag of helium with a small cabin hanging underneath it. It is not fast, it is not brave, but it is patient, and that patience made them perfect submarine spotters. A blimp could hang almost motionless above the water for hours, watching for a shadow, or a periscope, or a slick of oil. On the morning of August the 16th, 1942, two men climbed into a blimp designated L8. Lieutenant Ernest Cody, the pilot, and Ensign Charles Adams, his crewman. Both experienced, both careful, both entirely ordinary men, doing an entirely ordinary job. They lifted off just after 6 in the morning into clear and gentle weather and headed out over the Pacific. Their patrol took them out past the Farallon Islands, a cluster of rocks in the ocean west of San Francisco. Back at base, radio operators logged their reports. Everything was routine. Position updates, weather, nothing unusual. Then, at around 7:40 in the morning, they radioed something interesting. They had spotted an oil slick on the water. An oil slick was exactly what a submarine hunter wanted to see. It could mean a damaged enemy submarine, hiding just below the surface. They reported that they were going down to investigate. That message was completely calm, professional, not a hint of alarm in it, and it was the last thing anyone ever heard from either man. But here is the part that makes this so strange. There were witnesses. Fishing boats were working the water nearby. Several crews watched the blimp come down low over the slick and hover there, just above the waves, for several minutes. Then they watched it slowly climb back up and drift away into the sky, perfectly normally, as if nothing at all had happened. Hours passed, and then the L8 came back. But it came back wrong. It drifted in over the coast, unguided. It bumped against a cliff. It dragged along the ground. Beachgoers watched it wander past, low and clumsy, with no one visibly at the controls. Finally, it sagged down into a residential street in Daly City, just south of San Francisco, and folded itself against a parked car in a house. A crowd gathered. Firefighters arrived and cut into the fabric, expecting the worst, but there was nobody to rescue. The cabin was simply, impossibly empty, and everything inside made the mystery worse rather than better. The radio was in perfect working order. If either man had been in trouble, all he had to do was speak. Both life jackets were still hanging inside. No airman flying over the ocean takes off his life jacket voluntarily. There was no blood, no sign of a struggle, no sign of a fire or an explosion or a fight. But one detail stood out immediately. The cabin door was open, and reports say it had been fastened open deliberately rather than swinging loose. So, whatever happened, at least one of those men had opened that door on purpose, over open water, and left it open. The Navy launched an investigation immediately. Ships and aircraft searched the ocean for days. They found nothing. No bodies, no debris, no trace of Cody or Adams was ever recovered. Two men gone from a sealed cabin in the sky, in the middle of a war. The theories wrote themselves. Theory 1, a Japanese submarine surfaced beneath them and took them prisoner. It was wartime, and paranoia was at its peak. The problem is that fishing boats were watching. Nobody saw a submarine, or a struggle, or a boat of any kind. Theory 2, espionage. The two men were spies and defected, slipping away to a waiting vessel. But both men were, by every account, unremarkable and well-liked. One of them had a wedding coming up. Neither had any hint of a secret life. Theory 3, you already know. Aliens. Two airmen lifted out of a flying machine by something in the sky. It has become one of the great staples of unexplained mystery books, and it has exactly as much evidence as you would expect. But the real answer is probably standing right there in that open doorway, and it is far sadder than any of this. To understand it, you need one fact about airships. A blimp flies on the knife edge of balance. The helium above pulls up. The weight of the cabin, the fuel, and the crew pulls down. The pilot's whole job is managing that balance. Take weight out of the cabin, and the balance breaks instantly. The airship becomes lighter than the air around it, and it climbs. Fast. 2 grown men in flight gear is a significant amount of weight. Remove both of them, and a blimp does not gently sink. It rises like a released balloon, which explains something the witnesses saw. The blimp climbing back up into the sky all on its own, after hovering over the water. It was not being flown. It was floating, lighter than it should have been, because the 2 men who belonged in it were no longer aboard. So picture the most likely sequence. They descend to inspect the oil slick. To see properly, someone opens the cabin door and leans out. The blimp lurches, or a gust catches it, or he simply loses his footing on a wet step, and he falls. His partner throws himself to the doorway to help, reaching, shouting, trying to grab a man in the water below, and in leaning out that far, he goes over too. The instant the second man leaves the cabin, the blimp loses hundreds of pounds. It leaps upward, out of reach, in seconds. And that is the horror of it. Their aircraft, their radio, their life jackets, and their only chance of rescue all sailing away into the sky above them, while they tread water. The Pacific there is cold and deep and enormous. 2 men without life jackets in that water do not last long, and the currents carry everything away. If that is what happened, why was it never officially solved? Partly because it was 1942. The Navy had an entire war to fight, and very little time for 2 men and 1 wandering blimp. The inquiry could not prove any single version of events. Without bodies, without witnesses to the fall itself, everything remained speculation. So the official finding was, in effect, that nobody knew. And an unanswered question in wartime is a perfect seed for a legend. Over the following decades, the story was retold in book after book, each one a little stranger than the last, until the plain and painful explanation was buried under submarines and spacecraft. But behind the legend, there are 2 real people, 2 young men, doing a boring and dangerous job, who almost certainly died trying to save each other. The ghost blimp is remembered as one of the great unexplained mysteries of the war, but the strangeness of it comes almost entirely from one thing: a door that someone opened over the sea and never came back through. No enemy, no conspiracy, no visitors from anywhere, just physics and cold water and a moment of terrible bad luck. And maybe an act of courage in that final minute, from a man who leaned too far out of a doorway trying to reach his friend. The impossible scenes almost always have ordinary answers. It is the people inside them who deserve to be remembered. If a real mystery with a real answer is your kind of thing, then you are exactly where you should be. Next time, a remote farmhouse in the snow, a single set of footprints leading up to the door, and absolutely none leading away. Hit subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.